this is part 2 of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and the Speckled Band. And so when we left off, Sherlock Holmes had gone to check out the will, and he figured out that, Roy Lott did have a lot of motive for his daughters never to get married. If they got married, he would have to divide up what income he made each year and give a provision for them annually each year, and so he wouldn't have a lot to live off of. So we've got a motive. So Holmes and Watson travel to Stoke Moran to the home, and they're met there by Helen Stoner. Stepfather is still in London on business, and so Holmes really kind of takes his opportunity to analyze this room, from top to bottom. So in there, he discovers a bell pull, which is recently installed. It's just a couple of years before her sister's death. A bell pull, which means that, like you pull and it rings a bell somewhere in the house, and people, servants, they would use it for, to ring down to the servants' quarters so servants could come up and see what you needed. And there's also a ventilator, which was installed at the same time. And it's like a vent. It's like in the ceiling, close to the top of the ceiling on Dr. Roy Lott's side of the room. So remember, the first room is his, the second room was Julia's, and the third room is Helen. So it's on this ventilator is against the wall that goes into Roy Lott's room. Well, Holmes finds both of those things very strange. So he checks them out. So he discovers that the bell rope is a dummy. It doesn't ring anything. It's not connected to anything. And he discovers that the ventilator doesn't connect to an outside air, which would totally defeat the purpose. It actually connects to Dr. Roy Lott's room. So that's why Julia could always smell his cigars, and they got on her nerves. It was passing back and forth between the two rooms instead of outside air. So he goes in Dr. Roy Lott's room, and in the room, he finds a couple of interesting things. First, he spots a dog leash that's coiled up to make a whip, a large iron safe, which Helen tells him is filled with the doctor's papers. She's never seen inside of it, and then a saucer of milk. So he's like, does the monkey drink milk, or the cheetah, why does he have a saucer? Do y'all have a cat? No. So Holmes tells Helen that to go to bed early and to sleep in her old bedroom, the one that she originally was in. And that he and Watson would wait at the inn, which is kind of like right across the road, and they can see the house from there. And she'll give them the signal when Dr. Roy Lott has gone to bed and the house is still and quiet. She's going to turn on a light in the room. So Holmes and Watson sneak into the house when Helen gives them the signal. They sneak into the middle room, and they're going to wait there and wait to see what happens. So they keep this vigil several hours. They're keeping a silent vigil. They hear Dr. Roy Lott moving about. They think he's going to bed. About the same time of the morning, they hear him light a lantern in his room. And then, everything kind of happens really quickly. So Holmes jumps up and starts lashing at this bell pull with his cane. And then several seconds later, there's this deadly cry that comes out of Roy Lott's room. And when Holmes and Watson go in, they find him sitting in his chair, with a dog leash in his hand and a swamp adder, a snake, wrapped around his neck. The doctor had been bitten by the deadly snake and died in seconds. Okay? Holmes uses the dog leash to capture the snake, which has a speckled band on its body, at the top of its body, and then puts it back into the doctor's iron safe and shuts the door. Okay? So wicked stepfather is dead, and his own plan kind of came back on him. Helen is free to marry and receive her inheritance. And happy ending, right? So when he's thinking about it, Holmes is like, he was almost kind of thrown out. He was on the wrong scent at first, believing that the speckled band referred to the band of gypsies who lived there. That's what he initially thought. But when he inspected the room, he deduced that the dummy bell rope was there to act as a bridge for something passing into the room. Given his knowledge of the doctor's penchant for Indian animals, dangerous Indian animals, he thought a snake might be the likely culprit. So what he would do, the doctor would take the snake out of the safe where he kept it, and that would be what the clanging sound would come from when he puts the snake back in and shuts the door. That's where the clanging comes from. So he would take the snake out of the safe. He would send it up through his ventilator. It would come through the ventilator and down the bell pull and land on the bed. Well, it might bite whoever's laying in the bed. It might not. Dr. Roylott would give it enough time to think, if it was going to happen, it was going to happen. And then he would take a tin whistle and whistle. He'd train this snake. He would whistle for the snake to return back to the room. So the snake would climb back up. It would climb up the bell rope. It would go through the ventilator and back down into Dr. Roylott's room, where it would have a saucer of milk and be happy, and he would shut it back up in the safe. Brilliant, right? So this might happen one time. It might happen a million times. So it obviously happened several times because the sister had been hearing the whistle like every single night and didn't know where it was coming from until one day, it was agitated enough to bite. A snake, they're drawn to sudden movement. So she could have turned over in her sleep, and that's when the snake bit her. Well, the doctor would have had to have a really keen eye to find two little snake teeth bite, right? It was going to be successful. It was long game, right? He would send it every night. Eventually, one night, if he tried it enough times, the snake would end up biting, and then she would die, and he would get to keep the full allowance. And then when the other sister was going to get married, same thing, right? Let's get rid of her too. No one will ever know. So Holmes believes that when he started lashing at the rope with the cane, that he riled up the snake, which is why he climbs back up and turns his temper on the doctor's dad. But he's not going to lose too much sleep over that. Okay? So obviously in this case, the solution involves underhanded trickery in an exotic creature, which is the speckled band or the snake of the title, rather than the red herring that Doyle throws our way, which was the band of traveling gypsies that wear the spotted handkerchiefs, because that's probably where your brain was going as you were reading. Which highlights a really important feature of the lot room mystery, that the solution must not either be too obvious or too out there, right? Too out of the realm of possibility. Like many of Sherlock Holmes' stories, the British Empire lurks in the background. Dr. Roylott, obviously, he met the girl's mother in India. He likes to have animals from that country, so that connection is there. And then also in there was a throwback to to Wilkie Collins' The Moonstone, which was considered to be the first detective story. There were Indian jugglers in his story, not a gang of gypsies, but it was very interesting little connections. I like how he made all those little connections to the first detective stories with Poe's The Baboon. There was also a monkey in the murder of Aru. Oh my gosh, my brain. I love when I do this because it's just, but the murder in Rue Morgue. The morgue wasn't coming to me. There was a monkey in that story as well. So Holmes' analysis of the situation, his daring rescue of Helen Stoner from the jaws, or fangs rather, of death, make this story an original take on some old mystery tropes. It makes it different from the others. And obviously one of the most satisfying tales in Sherlock Holmes canon.